Good morning, colleagues. Dear audience, dear participants, Madam Director of ODIHR, Excellencies, members of the civil society, a very good morning to all of you. I am Faten Benabilez Fought. I'm the ambassador, permanent representative of France to the OSCE, and I will be the moderator of this session. This session, which is taking place under the title Humanitarian Issues and Other Commitments, including combating trafficking in human beings, refugees, and displaced persons. Addressing the protection needs of refugees and displaced persons, while recognizing that displacement increases vulnerability to exploitation and trafficking, is a critical priority across the OSCE region. Participating states have long acknowledged the link between displacement and violation of OSCE commitments, reaffirmed the right to seek asylum and protection of refugees, and emphasized treating people crossing borders with dignity. As crises, to say the least, escalate worldwide, millions are forced to flee across and within borders in search of safety. By mid-2024, the OSCE region accounted for more than 25.5 million forcibly displaced or stateless people. Displaced populations, particularly those facing systemic inequalities, are increasingly vulnerable to trafficking and exploitation. As highlighted in the 2023 Vancouver Declaration. In crisis, traffickers prey on the most at risk, including women and children, subjecting them to sexual and labor exploitation or coercing them into criminal activity. During Russia's war, or since the start of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, such cases have also been reported. This plenary session will examine how OSCE participating states are addressing freedom of movement, displacement, and trafficking. It will highlight civil society and survivor leadership, share good practices, and explore lessons learned and opportunities for improving protection and anti-trafficking responses across the region. I'm very pleased now to welcome the three honorable personalities who will be introducing this session. I will first turn to Mr. Jean-Benoît Manès, who is currently the Deputy Coordinator of OSCE Office for Combating Trafficking in Human Rights. Jean-Benoît brings with him 25 years of experience in the UN system, where he led UNICEF's programmatic responses, particularly on child protection, including trafficking, in several countries in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. He studied political sciences and international relations in a very nice city, which is Paris. To my right, also Mr. Dorsa Mama Kadou. Welcome to you, sir. You are co-founder and president of Spark 15 and board member of Voicify. Spark 15 is a refugee and migrant-led organization based in Malta that was founded by youth groups striving for equal treatment of refugee and migrant youth in Maltese society. Voicify is the European Forum for Youth with Lived Migration Experiences, a European umbrella organization led by young people with lived migration experience, which fosters the political participation of young refugees, exiled migrants, asylum seekers, and undocumented people. Vocify represents 35 member organizations based in 16 different EU member states who work with tens of thousands of young persons with lived migration experiences. They claimed to be the first ever European self-representatives structure for organizations led by young people with lived migration experiences. We know Mr. Dorsa as he participated in our OSCE training course on new technologies and human rights at borders last December. Welcome to you. Now, to my left, a very good morning to you, Ms. Jane Lassander. It's an honor to have you here as anti-trafficking advocate, vice chair of the ODIHR, International Survivors of Trafficking Advisory Council, so-called ISTAC. Jane, you are a survivor of child sexual exploitation and trafficking, and you are the vice chair of the International Survivors of Trafficking Advisory Council. You also serve as the chair of Hope for Justice, and you are a member of the Modern Slavery PECS with
Policy and Evidence Center.
Exactly, thank you. With Oxford University Lived Experience Advisory Panel. And you are an international speaker and author. Thank you very much for being here. Now that the three speakers have been introduced, I'd like to briefly remind you of the rules of this meeting before giving them the floor. Or maybe I will do this procedural aspect after the three guest speakers have spoken. Sorry for that. So I may now turn to I think we said to. Sorry. The first speaker should be. Sorry. Thank you. Yes, I was not sure, but yes, it is. It is Jean-Benoît, so you have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Ambassador. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues, today is an issue very close to my heart because, as was mentioned, from Iraq to Afghanistan, from Timor to Kosovo, from Mozambique to Angola and Afghanistan, I spent 25 years of my life in crisis situation, witnessing firsthand how, when people are forced to live at short or no notice at all, with little capacity to pack, and end up in a country, a foreign country, where more often than not they don't speak the language, they have limited resources, they have no idea of the local regulations, they become very vulnerable to traffickers who, of course, tend to privilege ways which are a little bit lost and looking for support and answers. That's even more the case in the context of mass displacements that occur when you have a major crisis. The risk doesn't diminish with time. Actually, it's more of the contrary. Most states in OSCE do have, and thanks for that, a quite generous and reactive package when it comes to welcoming and accommodating refugees or asylum seekers. But this support fades along the way. And when we have a situation where a refugee, the first year can be supported, the second year a little bit less, the third year definitively not. And that turns also the risk that those refugees resort to negative coping mechanisms, including trafficking for sexual or labor exploitation. So it's really important to follow, and that's my first message, that situation is not static. What can be a refugee today can be a trafficked person tomorrow morning. And unfortunately, we've seen that national systems are not built for those kind of crises. No one was ready for the Ukraine massive influx. No one was ready for 2016 migration crisis. And in face of the situation, systems need to adapt rapidly to a massive scale. They don't have the capacity anymore to look into the detailed situation of each and single migrant slash refugee slash traffickers because they're not able to identify them, to interview them, and to support them. OSCE and CTHB, a lot of acronyms, was one of the first international organizations to alert about this risk at the onset of the Ukraine war. We issued guidelines and recommendations, and those recommendations are still valid. We organized many workshops from frontline workers to legal practitioners and trained around 5,000 stakeholders to be more aware of the challenges and opportunities or best practices to deal with the situation, including in other forms of trafficking, because we always have this perception trafficking is related to sexual exploitation, but we know that there are other forms like labor exploitation, like criminal exploitation, like drugs exploitation, and so on and so forth. We can continue to do that, and we shall. We can train more people. We can organize more workshops. But it will not work if, at participating country level, we don't also have some improvement or systematization of the response. The first one is on the legal perspective to ensure that we just don't have one article in the criminal code, but we have a global law that considers all forms, or at least most forms, of trafficking, including the most growing ones, such as labor and criminal. These laws, as we said before, must focus, of course, of a human rights-based and victim-centered approach and trauma considering a situation with the 4P, which you will hear a lot today, prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnerships. Partnerships especially important because we tend to put the focus on prosecution, while reintegration and protection of refugees in the social systems require the involvement of everyone, health, education, social policy, labor, including at the centralized level. But law by itself is not sufficient. We need also to be sure that in the national response plans, which sometimes are very detailed, the both issues of crisis and trafficking interlinked. I've seen many emergency response plans, as I said before, because I worked in emergencies, and those are usually super solid under the leadership of civil protection most of the case, and they identify very solid logistics response, but they miss the trafficking component. On the other hand, we do have our national anti-trafficking plans, which similarly are usually quite comprehensive or trying to be, but they are built for a situation of stability, and they are not, I would say, flexible enough to consider or integrate crisis. So one of our key messages today is to look at those two aspects from a joint point of view. Dear colleagues, the OSCE in general and CTHB in particular is fully committed to help you and participate with your countries to enhance and improve the crisis preparedness of the national counter-trafficking mechanisms. We've all learned from previous crises, and one last warning, the issue doesn't end at the end of the crisis. Actually, even during the recovery phase, we have some specific challenge to take care about. I'm confident that today and during all the following events and operationalization of our joint action plans, we will be able to move in the right direction. Thanks, Mrs. Ambassador.
I thank you very much, Jean-Benoit, for this insightful introduction from the perspective of the organization. I think the 4 Ps and the need to be consistent with our legislative framework, but also the fact that there is no end of the problem with the end of the crisis provide us a very good transition to pass the floor to Mr. Dosamama Kadu, who will be speaking from from if I may say, the point of view of the practitioner, quote unquote. But this experience from within, I think, will be very, very important. So you have the floor.
Honorable chairs and person, distinguished delegates and colleagues and my friends, good morning. In the face of a mounting humanitarian challenge across the OSCE and region and beyond, we come together to reinforce a fundamental principle that every displaced person entitled to dignity, protection, and hope. This commitment reflects on our collective responsibility and the essence of our shared humanity. Displacement nearly doubled during the last decades, whether in Ukrainian, Palestinian, Afghanistan, Sudan, Yemen, and Ethiopia, and beyond. Humanity is being tested across global as April 2025, over 122 million people were faced displaced worldwide, including about 25, equal to one every 67 person on Earth. Beyond on Earth, behind every conflict, every region, route, and every border face their families, children, and dreams that are no different to our own. The homes begin destroyed today were no different to the one we return every evening. The child field war are no different to our own. If we truly believe in humanity, we must recognize ourselves in each other. My name is Dursa, and I'm standing before you today not as a static, but a lived statement to resilience and hope. I left Ethiopia at the age of 16. I walked through Sudan and crossed this desert in the face unimaginable hardship from abuse at the hands of traffickers and imprisonment in Libya, simply because I lacked the necessary documentation. Crossing Mediterranean was not an adventure for me. It was choice between life and death, knowing that if I'm not managed to cross, I will be gone forever. When I finally reached Malta, I spent nearly a year in detention that was cold, isolated by inside me, burning the beliefs that my story have not ended there. Even when everything taken from me, my voice was remain, and the voice can be rebuilt. My journey toward change begin within volunteering and NGOs, local council, and community space. But something was missing, representation. Refugees were constantly being spoken about, but rarely allowed to speak for themselves. Spark 50 refugee migrant-led organization came to a bond. Spark is more than just NGOs. It is a movement empowering in the community of change makers who believe that young people experience of the migration can lead, inspire, and transform our society. Today, I'm honored to serve not only as a co-founder of Spark 15, also as a board member of the Voice the first ever European self-representative network led by young refugee and migrant. Through this initiative, we have turned pain into purpose, isolation into conflict connection, we show that when refugee lead, everyone benefit. Beyond my stories lies greater the two young refugees face barrier that silence their potential and limit their responsibility. I will be listing 5 of them here. First, access to the territory pushback. At the sea and land border continue denying people their right to seek asylum. In 2024, across the report from 9 NGOs that were at least about 120 pushback, 20,000 pushback in cases in European Union. Many young investigating into the right violence at the borders also remain large inactively with the lack of accountability for abuse committed by the authority. Second, detention for too many. The first experience of Europe is behind the locked door. No child or young person should detain for seeking protection. Third, criminalization. The young refugee and migrant, as well as those who stand in solidarity with them, increasingly face criminal or administrative processing across border to seek a protection, not a criminal. Fourthly, education countless young are denied access to education, language, course, and recognition of their qualification, which preventing them from becoming empowered and integrated. Fifth, representation. Too often decisions are made about us, not with us. We are not just statics, we are represent human lives, talent, and dreams that being denied and dismissed or lost. In order to achieve to this the reality, I urge all the participants, state and institution of the boldly grant safe and legal pathway to protection and strength accountability for the right violence at the border. No one should have to risk their life to find the safety. Ended at the detention of the children and the young people. Detention destroy hope, so dignity. Preventing alternative must become the global standards. And the criminalization of the migration and the solidarity seek safe and provide human rights support should never be treated as a criminals. Ensuring the inclusive education. Education is the bridge for several contribution to make accountable, accessible, inclusive, and affordable for all. Promoting meaningful participation, set up a youth advisory council, and including refugee, migrant, youth as equal partner in policy design, support refugee-led organization. Lastly, changing follows when refugees are leadership and position. Invest in such leadership, both politically and financially. In my conclude, I would not stand here today without the support of my friends, mentors, NGOs, and communities who recognized my human before they saw my paper. And today, to everyone, everywhere, who continue stand up for refugees, who offers help, hand, platform, or the movement of the compassion. I thank you. Migration is not a problem to be solved. It is human story to be understood. When refugees are given a chance, we do not just survive, we are contributor, we are builder, and we are leader. So my short, simple message is believe in believe in the power of young refugees. Give us a chance, and we will build bridge, trust, and we will create the change. Thank you very much.
A very warm thank you to you, Mr. Kadou. Your testimony of your forced migration experience and your lessons learned have certainly been duly noted. The 5 lessons and the very powerful sentences you just shared, and I'm sure it will be also giving opportunities for discussions later on. Now I will turn to our third and last introducers before I open the floor to you. Jen Lassander, over to you.
Thank you. I am so ready to share my insights with everybody here today. I want everybody to wake up and listen, because I want to really give you a message from my heart today. In my speech, I'm going to also share a little bit of my journey as a child victim of sexual exploitation and trafficking. And even though it's painful for me and I still have scars, I want to share this to illustrate that we are talking about people. It's not just numbers on a paper. So thank you for all listening, and together we can do this. And I just really believe in the power in this room today. Everybody here has a responsibility and a part to play, whether it's going back to your organizations, going back to your states, bringing the message, because together that's the way we can get things done in a positive way forward. So that's how I want to start. When people are uprooted, when refugees flee conflict or war, they need safety. It's always safety first. But their vulnerability to human trafficking skyrockets. The systems of protection we rely on have gaping holes. For those who have lost everything and are displaced, losing their whole safety and security, including their community and legal status, the threat of exploitation is constant. The immediate and terrible result of this vulnerability is a failure of the system that then results in a failure of identification. This leads to a devastating trail of missed opportunities. And it's why trafficking is a profound human rights issue that demands immediate and concrete action. Now is the time to move beyond awareness to concrete action. Is everybody with me on that? Yes. I once was invisible in plain sight. My voice was stolen, but today I stand here with a powerful voice, and I am not invisible. There is a huge gap between policy and the grim realities of trafficking, as well as the vulnerabilities of people fleeing war and conflict, which makes them a target for trafficking. The only way to bridge this gap is to include the voice of survivors in an ethical and meaningful way at every level. That while lots of people and organizations now recognize the need to include survivors, the success of this is how it is done. And that means doing things ethically, genuine respect for this kind of expertise that is recognized like other types of expertise, paying the survivor and working alongside in co-design and implementation, not just using us as add-ons. Survivors know the minds of traffickers, the nuances of their coercive control and manipulations. Crucially, we also know the minds of victims and survivors and how trauma works. We also know what it feels like to be fleeing conflicts, wars, and the vulnerabilities that we experience. Policymakers and academics sometimes miss these crucial insights, as they rely on theory alone. Working together in genuine partnership with survivor leaders will help close the holes in the net, making policies stronger and more effective. We can co-design and implement training on awareness and on a trauma-informed, victim-centered way of working. We can train first responders, lawmakers, healthcare workers on how to spot the signs, what to do and how to report. We can train on the vulnerabilities of displaced people fleeing conflict and wars, and how to spot and identify those in trafficking situations. And today at 4 o'clock, I want to invite you all as my guest. As ISTAC, we will be launching our survivor-led indicators, which is really exciting and very crucial that you get these so that you can understand more the nuances and really from the insights of survivors. So there's an invitation for you. With OSCE, ODIHR, ISTAC, we are already part of these trainings. I am so proud of the OSCE and ODIHR because we are not used in a tokenistic way. This is an example globally. We are used, like today, look, I'm sitting here with all these lovely people. So this is just amazing. First responders and healthcare workers are better able to identify victims of trafficking and those fleeing wars and conflicts because survivors' voices are sharing their insights. As a child, I was trafficked by a gang of men. Sometimes I just can't even put it into words, but when you are 7, 8, 9, up until I was a teenager, every week, abused, tortured, raped, locked up in cupboards. How can you put that in words? And you know what hurt the most? Not the people who were damaging me. It was that I felt invisible because nobody spotted the signs. I didn't live in the middle of faraway country. I lived in the UK in a house, a normal house, in a small street, in a town. And this is where it happened. And sometimes we got taken where other children was, and there was police, doctors, everybody involved in this gang. And I was sold. And I just remember being terrified as a child, sitting on my bed, looking at my hand, thinking, well, I can see this hand, but nobody else can. I think I'm invisible. Can you imagine one of your loved ones feeling so invisible that they think that nobody can even see them? And many times I was in hospital, the biggest chance to be identified. And I would sit there with many injuries that I should not have. And many, many times, from fractured skulls to broken bones, bruising. But always one of the traffickers would be with me, telling me, if you tell anyone, we're going to cut you in pieces and put you in a freezer. So how could I speak up? My voice was stolen. But I could use my eyes, and I would stare at the doctors, begging, like, please see me, help me. But nobody spotted this as an indicator, because I wasn't speaking. So I was missed. At school, half asleep from being trafficked maybe the night before. Bruises, broken bones, coming to school with no food when all the children came with food. Instead of asking me, are you okay? Are you safe? Why are you not coming with food? They said, oh, you're a terrible child. You always forget everything. You're going to punish you. When I was 15, I ran away. I just couldn't cope anymore, and I was going to jump in front of a train. And something inside me stopped me and said, no, you are going to stand up in the future, and you are going to see the people who were so desperate and invisible, ready to jump in front of them trains, and you are going to be their voice. And I ended up living on the streets in London, drinking alcohol. I looked probably like I was about 12. Nobody spotted this child living on the streets of London. I was arrested by the police. And then I was really happy, like, wow, somebody's seen me. I got put in, like, the cell for the night. And it sounds really silly, but I was happy, like, wow, I'm safe. And the next day, they threw me on the street and said, you're worthless. We don't even want to bother with you. So again, I was just out on the street. These were all missed opportunities. A devastating trail of missed opportunities, because no one knew what to look for or how to identify a victim right in front of them. So what must we do? We need to go beyond tokenism and truly embed survivors at the core of policy and trainings. Oh dear OSCE ISTAC has given me a platform to use my voice to advise, guide and offer recommendations and to co-write publications such as the NRN Handbook, the guidance on establishing and maintaining national survivor of trafficking advisory councils. And that's one of my recommendations. If every state, every country sets up a group of survivor leaders, people who really want to use their voice, to advise you, to give you their insights, to work alongside you, things will change, I can tell you this, and things will be more effective. And it's not hard to set one up. You can come, ISTAC will help you, we will guide you, we will advise you, we will work alongside the survivors with you. So this is really crucial. I urge you today not just to listen to me, but to take immediate action. Invest and commit to setting up survivor councils. Not only are you embedding the survivor voice and creating partnerships, but it gives your policies, legislation, trainings and work credibility. If you want to find solutions and truly end trafficking and learn how to protect the vulnerable, displaced people fleeing war and conflict, you must empower the people who know how it operates. We have the knowledge, the expertise, and the lived experience. Now let's together, I'm talking everybody in this room, to have the courage to build a future where no victim is ever invisible again. And I hope you're all with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think your call for change, dear Jane, for change and action, for protection of vulnerable ones, have been heard. I must say the network of survivors is really something which I consider as one of the most valuable added value of this organization, the OSCE, and the work of ODIHR and the office of Kerry Johnson, represented by Jean-Benoit today. Thank you so very much for this very powerful testimony, and not only the testimony, but the lessons you are putting forward, and the need for a sensitive approach to trafficking in everything we do, from social sectors to the police and the justice. I think which brings us back to the 4 Ps that were introduced at the beginning of the session. Thank you again very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure those 3 introductions very much to the point, which will help us all to keep focus on this very topic during the session that I am about to open. But please allow me for just recalling the rules before opening the floor to the room. So when given the floor, please introduce yourself, give your name and the organization you represent. You may only take the floor on behalf of the organization under which you have registered to attend this conference. Note that speaking time is 3 minutes, and I will be very much looking at the clock, and I invite you to do the same. You have it in front of you. Please keep your contribution brief and on topic, as I said, to facilitate the work of interpreters. Also, I plea you to speak clearly and slowly. The proceedings should be held in a respectful manner and in line with the code of conduct of this conference. All conference participants may submit written documents online via the conference platform, where they will be made available to all registered participants. Delegations of OSCE participating states may exercise their right of reply regarding any statement made by another participant in line with the meeting rules. A right of reply must be announced at the head of table during the session and then submitted in writing online to the conference platform. Any registered participant wishing to raise a procedural issue will be able to do so directly with representatives of the chair in office at the head table and not from the floor, please. All meeting rules and the code of conduct are published at the event website and apply to all events held at the conference, including the plenary sessions, side events, and other areas of the event venue. Yes, before opening the floor, I'd like to draw everyone's attention that the speakers list for this session is available for consultation in the plenary room and on the conference platform. And before giving the floor to the first speakers, I'd like to say that I will be spelling out the names of the organizations as they were registered. There is nothing but a reading of those names, whatever they are. So it's my honor now to open the floor with the first organization registered, the political opposition movement, Erkin Uzbekistan, Free Uzbekistan. Before giving the floor to Public Fund Human Rights, I kindly remind you to stick to the topic and to the time limit. Political opposition movement, you have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hassan Bolburhanov, Erkin Uzbekistan movement. At the beginning of this year, the Uzbek authorities announced that by 2025, 5.2 million jobs would be created in the country, thereby confirming that the unemployment rate in Uzbekistan represents 25%. Given that these jobs are only created on paper, Uzbek citizens are forced to seek work abroad in search of better living conditions, and it's not uncommon when our compatriots fall victim to human trafficking. This alarming trend is a direct consequence of the lack of transparency in economic policy and the Uzbek authorities' insufficient attention to the real needs of the working age population. Behind the impressive figures lie broken lives and the despair of those who seek decent earnings outside their homeland. Creating jobs on paper does not solve the problem of unemployment. It only exacerbates it, pushing people into the hands of fraudsters and human traffickers. The Mirziyoyev regime, while continuing its cooperation with the international community, which is beneficial to its entourage, systematically violates fundamental human rights in Uzbekistan: the right to fair pay for work, the right to an adequate standard of living, the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of belief, and its free expression. For most Uzbeks, these remain an unattainable dream. The reality is that the economic and political structures created by the Mirziyoyev regime continue to limit opportunities for the realization of those fundamental rights. Fear of repression and surveillance from state authorities forces people to remain silent about human rights violations and abuses of power. On the eve of signing a new enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement between the European Union and Uzbekistan, we call on the EU leadership to pay attention to the critical human rights situation in Uzbekistan. Without guaranteed rule of law in Uzbekistan, UA investments in the country will be doomed to quickly disappear in the bottomless pockets of the Mirziyoyev regime. The European Union must insist on concrete and measurable steps by the Uzbek authorities in the field of human rights protection. Only under such conditions can the enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement bring mutual benefits to both sides. Sorry, there seems to be a problem with the sound. We don't hear anything.
3 minutes in order to allow for the maximum people to take the floor on the topic. Now it's the tour. I will be giving the floor, passing to Public Fund Human Rights before the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration of the Republic of Serbia. Public Fund Nomad Rights, you have the floor for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Уважаемые коллеги, госпожа
Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Moderator, my name is Rushet Kozhegulov. I'm a lawyer. I'm a director of Human Rights Public Fund. Let me provide you the results on our monitoring on humanitarian issues. Homelessness problem is very big, large scale in our country. Homeless people are being detained and forcibly displaced to other regions, and this is the violation of freedom of movement and freedom from discrimination. Police can detain people according to the law if these people have no documents, even they did not commit any kind of misdemeanor or crime. Last year, over 300,000 homeless people were registered. We registered hundreds of cases of violation of rights towards homeless people. The detention, discrimination, although they did not commit any crime or misdemeanor. All this is being done in order to improve the statistics, but at the same time violates the humanitarian principles to which the country is committed. We appeal to the OSCE countries to pressure our country to decriminalize homelessness, admit that forcible displacement and detention is a form of violation of the rights of these people, to provide the application of principle housing first in order to eradicate homelessness. Thank you.
Your statement, and now I'd like to pass the floor to the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration of the Republic of Serbia before Human Rights Union of Nagorno-Karabakh refugees. Migration of the Republic of Serbia, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to address you during this session on behalf of the Commissariat for Refugees and Migration of the Republic of Serbia. I would like to draw your attention to one of the longest and still unresolved refugee issue in Europe. That is the issue of Serbian refugees from the former Yugoslavia. Out of over 600,000 refugees and war-torn persons, about 400,000 have acquired citizenship of the Republic of Serbia, which is the largest process of refugee integration in modern Europe. There are still 25,000 refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia in the Republic of Serbia. Although 97% of refugees from former Yugoslavia solved their legal status predominantly through naturalization and acquisition of Serbian citizenship, further support for their full integration is still needed. In addition to the issue of refugees, the Republic of Serbia is also facing the problem of internally displaced persons, IDPs from the territory of the autonomy province of Kosovo and Metohija. The topic of internally displaced person is significant, complex, extensive, and nonetheless global. Allow me to inform you that there are more than 200,000 IDPs from AP, Kosovo, and Metohija in Serbia. After 26 years of displacement, the rate of sustainable return compared to the total number of IDPs in Serbia amount to only 2%. Unfortunately, internally displaced persons are still hostages to numerous unresolved issues. The return of Serbs and other non-Albanian population to AP, Kosovo, and Metohija is one of the most unsuccessful in history due to constant security pressure on the returnees, violation of fundamental rights and personal and economic freedoms. They have been provided with neither sustainable return to the AP, Kosovo, and Metohija, nor access to basic human rights and essential needs. It is necessary for the international community, primarily NATO and the EU, to unable to implementation of signed agreements within the EU facilitated dialogue, and thus the safe of the effective return of Serbs and non-Albanians to the territory of the AP Kosovo and Metohija, including the formation of the community of Serb majority municipalities. I would like to remind you that this obligation from the Brussels Agreement is still pending for more than 12 years. Refugees from the former Yugoslav republics and IDPs from Kosovo and Metohija make up around 10% of Serbia's population. To ensure continuity in supporting the most vulnerable families of refugees and IDPs, the government of Serbia has adopted the 2024 to 2030 strategy with an accompanying action plan. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me one more significant remark. The trafficking in human beings is a serious challenge for all European countries. On the World Day Against Trafficking in Human Beings, July 30, 2025, the second report of the National Reporter was published, containing 30 recommendations for cooperation and victim protection. Significant progress has been made, but challenges remain in the constant implementation of measures and further strengthening of protection mechanisms. With the coordination of the Office of the National Ombudsman and the support of the...
If I may invite you to conclude. Yes? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With the coordination of the Office of National Ombudsman and the support of other government and non-government stakeholders, the Serbian authorities are continually working together to improve the implementation record. Thank you for your attention.
I thank you very much. Now the floor goes to Human Rights Union of Nagorno-Karabakh Refugees. Thank you.
Honorable participants, distinguished colleagues, greetings to you all at the OSCE Human Dimensions Conference. I am Jasmine Markaryan, representing the Human Rights Union of Nagorno-Karabakh Refugees, an organization dedicated to defending the rights of over 150,000 Armenians who have been forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh between 2020 and 2023 as a result of racial hatred, discrimination, and war crimes committed by Azerbaijan. The forced displacement of the Armenian population from Nagorno-Karabakh was carried out in two major phases. The first was linked to the 44-day war launched by Azerbaijan on September 27, 2020, marked by war crimes and followed by a deepening socio-economic and humanitarian crisis. This resulted in the displacement of more than 40,000 people. In December 2020, the 10-month blockade of the Lachin corridor deprived the people in Nagorno-Karabakh of food, medicine, fuel, and other essential goods, leading to months of hunger and suffering. The second wave began in September 2023, when Azerbaijan once again launched military actions along the entire line of contact. Numerous civilians, including children, were killed, many others wounded or detained, and homes, kindergartens, and cultural monuments deliberately targeted. During this period, the entire Armenian population that had remained in the region, more than 100,000 people, was forcibly displaced. International judicial precedents confirm that a person becomes forcibly displaced when they are deprived of the genuine freedom of choice to remain in or leave their place of residence. In this case, the targeting of civilians, war crimes, various destructions, racial hatred, and persistent threats of force were the factors that made Armenian people leave their ancestral homeland. Today, the Armenians forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh face extreme psychosocial and humanitarian challenges, being deprived of their fundamental rights and to live in their homeland. Forced displacement must be understood as only a temporary condition. It cannot and must not be used to erase the historical presence of Armenian people or to undermine the rights of future generations. Even after the complete depopulation of Nagorno-Karabakh, Azerbaijan still continues to foster an atmosphere of fear, systematically erasing historical and cultural traces, destroying churches, cemeteries, villages, and looting the homes of people. Such actions gravely undermine the fundamental rights of displaced persons to voluntary, safe, and dignified return. We firmly affirm that the restoration of the rights of the forcibly displaced Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh is inseparable from the realization of their right to return. We call upon the international community and all states to extend their full support in ensuring this right, thereby protecting the dignity, identity, and future of the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. Thank you.
I thank you, Madam. And now the floor goes to Pan-Armenian Union Guardman Shirvan Nakhichevan, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I am Vilen Gabrielian. I represent the Guardman Shirvan Nakhichevan Pan-Armenian Union, which defend the rights of forcibly displaced Armenian refugees. Today I will focus on two tragic periods: the situation of refugees expelled from Baku, Ganzang, and Nakhichevan during 1988-1982, and the situation of people forcibly displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh in 2023. During this crisis, the role of human rights defenders has been vital, as they have become a bridge between the affected people and the state system. The issue of human rights protection in the Republic of Armenia has gained special significance in recent decades as the country faced serious humanitarian crisis. The first experience is connected to the mass displacement of the Armenian population from Baku and other territories of Azerbaijan between 1988 and 1992. Armenian families who had lived the two cities for generations were expelled. These people arrived in Armenia without any material resources, not even personal documents. Despite its own economic difficulties, the Republic of Armenia undertook the responsibility to receive and integrate these people. Human rights defenders were actively involved in providing humanitarian aid to refugees, finding housing, and ensuring employment opportunities. Armenia's second major experience occurred after the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, and especially in September 2023, when more than 120,000 Nagorno-Karabakh residents were forced to leave their homes and flee to Armenia. This displacement happened rapidly, violently, and under tragic circumstances. People who had lived their entire lives in Nagorno-Karabakh found themselves off the roads within hours, leaving behind their homes and their ancestors' graves. It was also important to ensure that the voices of the displaced persons were heard. These people should not be seen merely as aid recipients, but as holders of rights who have the right to determine their own future. Armenia's experience shows that protecting human rights requires a multifaceted approach and cooperation between state bodies, civil society, and international organizations. In conclusion, I call the international community, especially the OSCE and OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, to reaffirm their commitment to protecting the rights of refugees and forcibly displaced persons. The work of human rights defenders must receive international recognition and support as they forge real justice through their daily efforts. Only through joint efforts and unwavering commitment we can ensure that the rights of refugees are not violated and that justice and accountability are upheld according to the principles.
I thank you, sir. Now the floor goes to Union of Informed Citizens.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. My name is Daniel Leonisyan. I'm Programs Director at Union of Informed Citizens. There are two heads of states in the OSCE region for whom the main indicator of success is gaining lands. They both gain lands without souls. They both do not care about lives of their citizens as well as citizens of their neighboring countries. And I'm talking about Vladimir Putin and Ilham Aliyev. But only one of those two leaders is sending representatives here to talk about humanitarian issues and refugees in a way that it becomes a tool of creating territorial claims against another country, and that's Ilham Aliyev. Azerbaijani state agencies are organizing events here during which, while discussing humanitarian and refugee issues, proceed to name Armenian villages and regions as Azerbaijani lands. They're very clearly exploring the decades-old refugee problem, turning it into territorial claims towards Armenia. The second irony, ladies and gentlemen, is that the narratives are being disseminated by a state that perpetrated an ethnic cleansing of Armenians just 2 years ago. Just 2 years ago, these days, more than 100,000 Armenians were forced to become refugees, fleeing their homes and living their entire lives due to a state-orchestrated ethnic cleansing carried out by Azerbaijan. And now Azerbaijan is trying to use some 35-year-old history to build territorial claims against Armenia. By the way, while talking about late 1980s developments, they're skipping the fact that almost 500,000 of Armenians were displaced from Azerbaijan during that same period as a direct result of massacres organized by Azerbaijani authorities, particularly in 1988, Sumgait, followed in Kirovabad, Baku, Maraga, and other cities of Azerbaijan. No such targeted violence or massacres ever occurred against ethnic Azerbaijanis who departed Armenia back in those days. So let's sum up. They organized a massacre of Armenians in late 1980s, which led to exchange of refugees between Soviet Armenia and Soviet Azerbaijan back in those days. After that, of course, Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh for centuries have organized self-defense in order to protect themselves from massacre that was coming towards them. And Azerbaijan lost control over Nagorno-Karabakh for 30 years. But at the end, Azerbaijani troops took control over Nagorno-Karabakh and organized ethnic cleansing and moved all Armenians away from Azerbaijan. And now, after all, they're using refugees issue to build territorial claims against Armenia, to call internationally recognized Armenian villages and regions part of Azerbaijan. So that's a simple disrespect towards this auditorium.
So I would like you to conclude.
Yes, I'm concluding. Azerbaijani leadership does not care about refugees. It does not care about human lives. It does not...
Sorry, sir. You are exceeding the time.
Thank you.
I thank you, and I recall all the coming speakers that we have to stick to the proposed agenda according to introducing remarks. Now the floor goes to Hunar Hayot, non-profit organization for support women and youth. You have the floor.
Благодарю, мадам модератор. Меня зовут
Thank you very much, ma'am moderator. My name is Marina Sambarvata, non-profit organization for support of women, Hunar Hayot. It's my great honor to be presenting the words on behalf of my organization, Hunar Hayot. Thank you very much for the opportunity to show how equity and equality is being presented to the specific goals. Here in 2020, by the initiative of our region, the first Hakim females were presented. And as of today, 27% of civil servants of the region are females, and 26 of them are occupying managerial posts. Other than that, 30% of deputies of Kingasha, females from our in Majlisa, there are two members of the local parliaments. These are not just figures. This is testimony to the fact that at the regional level, the humanitarian obligations are being put in place. Special attention is given to the support of education. Only last year, over 109 females received their tertiary education, and many of them were also put in responsible authority. Hunar Hayot was established in 2020 to work on human rights, gender equality, and sustainable growth. And by taking the support from Ali Majlis, we also carried out a project on the employment of females and youth, and we also performed a training for 23 activist females to support their involvement in vital processes. In April 2024, we also organized a a workshop for disabled people and blind people. That was a major step towards that. And in 2025, we introduced a 10 media contents promoting the positive picture of females.
Interrupt. You are not only over time, but I'm not sure you addressed really the issue, which is human trafficking.
Thank you for attention.
I thank you. I thank you. Now the floor goes to Belgium. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm taking the floor today on behalf of the EU. Albania, Andorra, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Norway, the Republic of Moldova, and Ukraine have aligned themselves with the statement. Human trafficking is a grave violation of fundamental rights and a serious crime, often linked to organized networks. It takes many forms, from sexual exploitation and forced labor to child trafficking and illegal adoption. Worth 29.4 billion globally, trafficking involves actors ranging from gangs to seemingly legitimate companies. Combating it requires a whole-of-society approach with survivors' voices at the center to restore trust and break cycles of exploitation. But to prevent trafficking, we must address root causes: poverty, inequality, gender-based violence, lack of opportunities, conflicts, and discrimination. And the EU's response is both legislative and operational. The revised Anti-Trafficking Directive strengthens victims' protection, mandates early detection, improves data collection, and requires national action plans updated every 5 years. It adopts a victim-centered and gender-sensitive approach, extending protection to children, migrants, and persons with disabilities. Europol supports members of member states in dismantling criminal networks exploiting children for sexual purposes, forced marriage, or coerced criminal activities. In 2024 alone, EU action led to 219 arrests and the uncovering of 1,374 victims. The forthcoming anti-trafficking hub will further enhance cooperation and exchange best practices. The EU has also another policy toolbox with the Digital Services Act, the regulation on banning products made with forced labor, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, and the renewed Schengen Information System for preventive alerts. However, wars jeopardize all efforts made to tackle these challenges. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has created unprecedented vulnerabilities, dramatically exacerbating the risks of human trafficking, and it has strained institutional resources, impeding victim-centered responses, and increasing impunity for traffickers. According to UNODC's 2024 report, millions of displaced persons, particularly women and increasingly children, face heightened exposure to traffickers, both within Ukraine and in host countries. Trafficking networks have adapted quickly to the conflict context, exploiting displacement routes, lack of documentation, and limited law enforcement capacities. Victims are increasingly recruited online, subjected to sexual exploitation, forced labor, and coerced criminal activities. In conclusion, the situation of children is of particular concern. Numerous reports point to the forcible transfers and deportations of Ukrainian children by Russia. The EU has acted swiftly, supporting initiatives such as Bring Kids Back Ukraine and the Group of Friends on Children and Armed Conflict in Ukraine. In parallel, both UNODC and the Council of Europe stressed the need for stronger international monitoring, cross-border cooperation, and sustained funding to protect victims amid...
Can you bring your text to the conclusion, please?
The EU and its member states will continue to work tirelessly with all partners to eradicate trafficking in human beings. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Madam. Now I give the floor to Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan. Yes, you have the floor.
Здравствуйте, благодарю за...
Hello. Thank you for a chance to speak here. I coordinate a Democratic Movement Office for our organization. Today I would like to talk about the impunity of our regime when they persecute refugees abroad. For example, one of human rights activist and lawyer, she was given asylum in Belgium. Nevertheless, regime tried to kidnap her from the territory of Belgium. Recently, they got access to her own flat, to archives, to her mobile phones, actually, which contained information about torture victims and corruption. They keep persecuting her to make authorities take away the refugee status. Similar situation happened in case of another activist who got asylum in France. The regime impacted French government, referring to economic agreements, making France to take away the asylum. After the meeting of the president with Macron in December, the asylum status was taken away, and he was told to leave the country immediately. In Lithuania, me and my friend have been under constant surveillance. For example, I was attacked in March in the center of Vilnius by people hired by the regime. Unfortunately, there was no efficient investigation. The evidence was collected by me and my lawyer. Regardless of the provided facts, they stopped the investigation, and criminals could freely leave Lithuania and went back to Kazakhstan. So precious time was lost, and surveillance is continued. Ignoring such cases leads to sad outcomes. For example, in Kiev, one journalist was killed, a former refugee from Kazakhstan. So actually, it undermines the safety of all EU citizens. I appeal OSCE and participating states to stop cooperation with the regime of Nazarbayev and Tokayev, which actually persecutes refugees abroad, and please ensure the safety of refugees abroad.
I thank you, sir, for your statement and respect of the rules. And now the floor goes to the NGO Central Asian Progress and Integration Forum. Please.
Good morning, dear participants. My name is Salam Murbetov. I am here from Kazakhstan to make the voice of my nation heard and tell you about our realistic situation. I'm a simple person. I'm not a politician, not an official. I'm just a blacksmith. We are living in the 21st century. We have technology, science, and progress, but just take a look at what's going on at this time. In some countries, there's no war. Other countries help them. Others sell weapons to them, and only simple people suffer, and people die. Dear participants, well, since I'm just the fact that I'm as a blacksmith, I'm talking about a deep crisis. When a simple person is reminding you of a crisis, that's not normal. I have a very significant question. If the UN and OSCE is really working, why is it happening as it's going on? Why there are so many wars? Where are the results? How long are we supposed to live, to wait any longer? Who's supposed to rule this world? Dear participants, distinguished participants, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I will now, thank you, sir. I will now give the floor to Human Constanta. Thank you.
Distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, I'm Tatiana Zinyakova representing Human Constanta. The effects of the human rights crisis in Belarus, incessant since 2020, are not confined within its borders. Legal and bureaucratic machinery is consciously used to put Belarusians on the verge of statelessness, a risk particularly critical for 500,000 exiled Belarusians forced to leave home for fear of persecution, and equally relevant for the states hosting the exiles. In 2023, Belarus introduced a full ban on passport renewals through its consulates. The authorities consciously turned an ordinary consular service into a point of additional pressure. Exiles with expiring passports are sent official letters requiring them to appear at the Department of Citizenship and Migration to renew the documents. Belarusian state-endorsed politicians openly claim that only criminals would be afraid to return to Belarus to exchange a passport. For Belarusians living abroad, the change created a vacuum of legal protection. Without valid documents, the possibility to leave, work, or move freely is severely limited, while returning home to renew them carries a real risk of persecution, with hundreds detained when crossing the border. While for adults there are already some good practices, like being able to receive a travel document in Poland when the passport is expired, most vulnerable are Belarusian children born abroad who are not able to receive their first identification document and consequently proof of nationality. What may appear as a technical change in consular procedure is in fact a deliberate act of control that leaves entire families without protection. At the same time, amendments to citizenship law now allow authorities to revoke citizenship for committing extremist crimes. Out of 52 people most recently pardoned, with one rearrested and thousands still in prison, at least 13 had their documents taken the night before being brought to Belarus-Lithuania border. Sooner or later, and likely sooner, OSCE member states will face growing numbers of Belarusians without valid documents, adults unable to renew their papers, and children who have never had any. This will affect the access to education, healthcare, employment, and legal protection. We urge the states to recognize expired Belarusian passports and other documents as valid proof of identity, to adopt flexible documentation requirements for Belarusian parents who cannot access consular services, issue temporary or alternative travel documents to all categories of Belarusians, including children and newborns, to ensure freedom of movement and legal security, develop and implement coordinated regional responses to the growing statelessness crisis. This crisis of statelessness is real and will not stop at Belarusian borders. It is already testing the resilience and values of democratic states across the region. I thank you.
I thank you, Madam, and pass the floor to International Eurasia Press Fund. You have the floor.
I'm Yevgenia Hajiyeva, International Eurasia Press Fund. Dear friends, we have an important opportunity to engage in dialogue, exchange experience, explore solutions to specific challenges, and most importantly, develop approach aimed at strengthening equality, mutual respect, and legal protection of all peoples and all communities. We live in the time when the very foundation of human dignity is increasingly at risk. Composition is often framed as weaknesses. Human rights are politicized, and suffering is reduced as a data point of global reporting. According to the United Nations, over 100 million people worldwide have been forcibly displaced. But these are not just numbers. They present human stories, interrupted lives, and lost hopes. In the case of Azerbaijan, the consequences of resolved conflict remain profound. Since the late of 1918, more than 700,000 Azerbaijanis have lived in internationally displaced persons as a result of the former Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, one of the largest per capita IDPs population in OSCE region. In addition, around 300,000 ethnic Azerbaijanis were forcibly expelled from Armenia. Most of them have no practical or legal means to return, and their story has remained largely absent from the broader international dialogue. Together, these nearly 1 million displaced persons in Azerbaijan are part of the global reality where the entire community have been stripped of only their home, but also of recognition. In this context, we must be mindful of emergent risk, selective empathy, where some victims receive attention and others are sidelined. Our bureaucratic inertia, where the produced of always justice and humanity. We respectfully call on the OSCE and all participating states to applaud the principle of equal and non-discriminatory treatment of the displacement-affected population, regardless ethnicity, origin, religion, or political status. Counteracting politicization and selective empathy, ensure that forgotten refugee groups, including these displaced from Armenia, are included in international discourse and policy frameworks, and to promote a vision of humanitarian response rooted in dignity, where no life is deemed more or less worth of protection. In protecting people, we must not only defend laws, we must defend that makes us human. Thank you.
I thank you very much, and Madam, and I pass the floor to NGO Tashabuz Khorzem, please.
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, Zukrabazava, head of Tashabuz Khorzem from Uzbekistan. First of all, I'm taking this opportunity to tell you that our organization is performing massive work to disseminate information and prevent human trafficking, both regarding females and children. And our organization, we have carried out a project over which over 600 people, females, were trained to enhance their self-esteem and also enhance their financial skills and their employability. Over 500 females who wanted to set up their own business were given the appropriate instruments and support. Over 100 migrant females, owing to that, could start their own business. Dear participants of the conference, I'd also like to observe that from the state there is also a large work being done, not only to enhance the informedness, but also to prevent human trafficking. In all the regions of the country, there are professional centers to support citizens, as well as centers for those citizens who wish to leave their country and work abroad, and there are also language courses. Other than that, there are loans provided for those who want to start their own businesses. I'd like to mention the cooperation between the bank and the Uzbek Ministry of Entrepreneurship on the development for 2024-26. As part of that, there are also courses on the rudimentals of entrepreneurship, development of business plans for females from poor families, for migrants, and the jobless. I have personally run such training sessions in the Khorzem region and Karakalpakstan, and also near the ROC. In Karakalpakstan, we ran them in such far-off regions, and day-to-day work with villagers has led me to the conclusion that the lady who appeared yesterday with her face covered on the fact of violence being used against Karakalpak females. The question is, if a person is telling the truth, why hide their face?
Sorry.
Based on my own experience, I can say that working with such females, each day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm finished.
Thank you, Madam. The floor goes now to Human Rights Commissioner in the Republic of Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Kazakhstan has ratified the main international instruments aimed at combating modern forms of slavery. In the previous year, a dedicated law on combating trafficking in human beings was adopted. Such offenses are subject to strict criminal liability, with penalties of up to 18 years of imprisonment. Victims of human trafficking are provided with a guaranteed range of specialized social services and care, and crisis centers and shelters are operating across the country. A mechanism for the reintegration and repatriation of citizens subjected to exploitation abroad is being implemented. To prevent the trafficking of newborns, children are now officially being registered immediately after birth before being discharged from the hospitals. Kazakhstan is a party to the 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 Protocol. In 2009, law on refugees was adopted, establishing the right to asylum and the principle of non-refoulement. An individual may apply for refugee status while in Kazakhstan through local authorities, at the border through the border service of a national security committee, or even after in case of irregular entry into the country through the local authorities. Importantly, an application can be accepted even without identity documents. In such cases, personal details are recorded on the basis of the applicant's own statement. Refugee status is granted for 1 year with the possibility of annual renewal. This mechanism allows for a balance between protection and migration control while taking into account national security considerations, as Kazakhstan has found itself on the front line of major cross-border movements in Eurasia. Last year, the United States introduced new measures that temporarily limited access to asylum at the southern border when crossings exceeded critical levels, a step aimed at ensuring public safety and maintaining effective migration management. France, in turn, reformed its asylum and immigration procedures to enhance both efficiency and security. The United Kingdom adopted a comprehensive framework allowing certain cases to be processed in a safe third country with the broader goal of preventing irregular arrivals and strengthening border governance. When we look at international practice, it is absolutely clear that Kazakhstan is moving in line with this global trend, maintaining a careful balance between the right to asylum and national security. Even when refugee status is not granted, people are not returned to countries where their life or safety could be in danger. In Kazakhstan, expulsion is possible only by a court decision and only in specific cases such as a threat to national security or public order, an expired visa, or a serious violation of migration rules. Thank you.
I thank you, sir, and pass the floor to Ukraine, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. At the outset, I would like to thank introducers for sharing their stories. It is important to prevent such stories not repeat in this country, in our countries, anywhere. Russia's war of aggression has produced the largest displacement crisis in the OSCE area in decades. More than a third of Ukraine's population has been forced from home, with women and children disproportionately at risk of exploitation and trafficking. And this is about 10 million. So think about this huge amount of refugees. We see three convergent threats. First, trafficking risk generated by mass displacement. Ukrainians, mostly women and children, face recruitment for sexual and labor exploitation along travel routes and in destination countries. The OSCE Special Representative's Be Safe initiative proved valuable in risk-proofing journeys and connecting people to help. We encourage its continued use and resourcing. Second, deportations and forced transfers. Thousands of civilians, including children, have been taken through so-called filtration, separated from families, and moved deep into the Russian Federation. Conditions that create a climate of coercion and high vulnerability to trafficking, abuse, and forced assimilation. Third, methods of coercion that mirror traffickers' playbook. Russian security services increasingly use extortion and other blackmail, including threats to publish intimate images, to compel Ukrainians, especially youth, to act against their will, from forced online crimes to aiding acts of sabotage. The same tools traffickers use to recruit and control victims are being repurposed to coerce criminal activity, another form of exploitation that destroys lives and corrodes communities. Distinguished participants, Ukraine is acting. We reinforce frontline screening and referral, expand survival-centered services, and work with prosecutors through an interagency group of detection, disruption, and investigation of trafficking crimes. We value practical cooperation with OSCE Anti-Trafficking Office, ODIHR, UNHCR, and host country authorities. We invite participating states and the OSCE institutions to sustain.
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Just if you can bring the text to the conclusion, please.
Well, Madam Chair, you took 20 seconds by interrupting me. I'm sorry. And I still have them. Resource prevention. So, dear colleagues, protecting the displaced from traffickers and from those who coerce them into crime is not charity. It is an obligation under our OSCE commitments. Ukraine will continue to do its part and counts on your principled solidarity. The full statement will be distributed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank you for your understanding, because we still have two-thirds of the list, not to speak about the complementary list. Now the floor goes to ALLATRA International Public Movement, please.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Katarina Mikitova and I am official representative of ALLATRA IPM in Slovak Republic. Today, under the topic combating trafficking in human beings, I would like to speak about a problem that is not often mentioned, but is closely connected to this issue, the anti-child movement. This movement created an environment where dehumanization becomes normal, and this allows serious violence of human dignity to happen, and this is base for human trafficking. A clear example is Falun Gong in China, where for more than 20 years organs have been taken by force from prisoners. Thousands of people were killed simply because they were called a dangerous cult. This kind of language made persecution and base for human trafficking possible. One of the people who supported such ideas was Alexander Dworkin, the leader of Russian organization Ratsirs, whose influence reached far beyond Russia. A similar process is happening now in Russia itself. The so-called fight against sex has become a system of discrimination which targets not only regional minorities, but also environmental and social groups. This has created an atmosphere where anyone who is different can be seen as a threat. The most visible example is the Jehovah's Witnesses. After they were banned in 2017, there were raids, arrests, property confiscation, and even torture. But long before the physical violence started, there was a campaign in the media saying that these people were abnormal and did not deserve protection. And this is base for human trafficking, where victims are becoming invisible. This shows the key point. Before physical violence, there is always informational violence. Dehumanization is the first step. It happens when society stops defending the rights of others because it believes that some people don't deserve freedom. We can see similar action now in Europe, in Italy, France, Poland, and Czech Republic. There are campaigns against so-called sects that look like they are protecting society, but in fact they prepare the group for limiting basic rights and freedoms. Totalitarianism returns not through the open violence, but quietly from inside under the mask of protection. One of the groups under such attacks is ALLATRA, an international movement that works in climate research, microplastic studies, environmental protection, and human rights. Despite its scientific and humanitarian work, Alatra faces stigmatization and disinformation attack from the same anti-cult network. Therefore, I would like to invite you today at 4 p.m. to our side event where we will explain in simple...
I kindly ask you to conclude.
How this network works, that influence it has, and what risk it creates for human rights, safety, and freedom. And we will also share testimonies from victims of anti-cult activities in Africa. Thank you very much.
I thank you and give the floor to the Baku Initiative Group.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, distinguished participants. My name is Abbas Abbasov. I represent the Baku Initiative Group. When addressing the issues of human trafficking, refugees, and internally displaced persons, we cannot ignore the colonial systems that continue to generate these tragedies. Nowhere are these realities more visible than in the overseas territories still under French domination. In Mayotte, France has turned the island into a militarized fortress. Thousands of migrants and refugees, many of them from Comoros, risk their lives crossing dangerous waters. The situation is no different in French Guiana, Réunion, and other overseas territories where economic dependency, staggering unemployment, and environmental degradation, legacies of French colonial exploitation, push people into displacement and leave them vulnerable to trafficking networks. These are not natural crises or accidents of geography. They are the direct consequences of deliberate policies designed to maintain dependency and weaken local resilience. Human trafficking in these territories is nothing less than the modern continuation of colonial slavery. The refugee flows are not isolated humanitarian challenges, but the predictable results of systemic exploitation. The displacement of families across Ireland is not voluntary. It is forced upon them by the economic and political domination of official Paris. Nor is France alone. The atrocities of Belgium's colonial rule in the Congo remain one of the starkest examples of how colonial systems created lasting displacement, exploitation, and human suffering, injustices that the international community has still not adequately addressed. To end trafficking and displacement in these territories, firstly, we have to eliminate colonialism. Without genuine self-determination, the peoples of Mayotte, Réunion, French Guiana, and other overseas territories will remain trapped in cycles of exploitation, forced migration, and despair. The international community must hold France accountable and support decolonization so that these island nations can finally build their own futures, free from exploitation, free from forced displacement, and free from colonial domination. Thank you.
Thank you. Armenia National Committee of America, Western Region, you have the floor.
Honorable Moderator, distinguished delegates, I'm Garen Jimbashan and I address you all on behalf of the Armenian National Committee of America. When we speak of humanitarian issues, we speak not merely of statistics or abstract principles, we speak of people, of mothers who carry their children across borders in the dead of night, of elders forced to abandon their graves of their ancestors, their brothers and sisters, of entire communities erased from the map because the world looked away too long. That is the story of 120,000 indigenous Armenians of Artsakh, a people who in 2023 were starved, bombed, and finally driven from their ancestral homeland by the Azerbaijani regime. For 10 months, they were besieged and blocked, denied food, medicine, and fuel, punished for daring to exist as Armenians. And when the world's outraged faced into silence, tanks and drones finished what the hunger had begun. Today, these men, women, and children remain refugees on their own continent, displaced from the land their families had cultivated for over millennia. Their churches stand desecrated, their homes occupied, their culture systematically erased, and yet not a single international body has guaranteed their right to return. Humanitarian law is not a menu from which states can pick what to respect and what to ignore. It is a moral contract, a promise written when civilians are targeted, when whole populations are uprooted, we will not look away. Therefore, on behalf of the Armenian National Committee of America, I call upon this assembly to recognize the ethnic cleansing of Artsakh's Armenians for what it is, a humanitarian catastrophe and a stain on our collective conscience. to establish international mechanisms guaranteeing the safe, dignified, and collective return of the displaced Armenians of Artsakh to their homeland, and ensure that those responsible for this forced displacement are held accountable under international law. Ladies and gentlemen, if the OSCE and the international community fail to defend even the most basic humanitarian principles here, then what message do we send to every persecuted person waiting for justice? Humanitarian values are not proven in peace. They are tested in crisis. And this crisis of ours, it is the time to confront it now. I thank you for your attention.
I thank you, sir. And the floor goes to Association of Women and Girls of Uzbekistan. Please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, dear moderator, distinguished participants. Good morning. My name is Muradilova, and I'm the head of the Association of Women and Girls of Uzbekistan. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that individuals that are refugees are using the platform of OSCE that receive political asylum and share their testimony about the situation of women and girls in Karakalpakstan, where they stamp that Karakalpaks girls are subject to violence and they are being mistreated. We are dealing with females and girls, and we definitely reject such statements. In Uzbekistan, there are massive measures taken to enhance the rights and opportunities for females and to make their lives better. With some institutions, along with civic society organizations, are protecting them from violence and discrimination. There are also rights ensuring equal rights of males and females, and there are 29 rehabilitation centers countrywide. The new constitution has enshrined the ban on discrimination against women in the labor sphere. The new labor code ensures the possibility of equal opportunities and inadmissibility of forced labor. The residents of Karakalpakstan say that females are taking leadership roles and participating in entrepreneurial roles. This achievement ensures social stability and gender equality. As early as 2025, almost 57,000 girls received support to start their family businesses. 260 and 200 received 4 billion sums, and today 314 small SMEs and are being headed by, out of them 2,400 are being headed by females. I've been dealing with my business for 24 years and working for 30 years in social work. This is also our government has created such situation for females and giving us such positive support. Thank you.
Madam, the floor goes to the Holy See.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Trafficking in human beings, due to its multifaceted nature, remains one of the most serious and complex phenomena for the OSCE to address. It presents challenges in various ways, namely the manner by which it manifests itself, its victims, and the multitude of actors involved. Although both women and men may be subjected to this heinous crime, women and girls are among the most susceptible. Sadly, women continue to be trafficked for domestic or sexual exploitation. Equally alarming is the practice of so-called surrogate motherhood, which undermines the inviolable dignity of the human person by reducing women and children to mere objects of commerce. This constitutes a profound violation of the dignity of both woman and child. For this reason, the Holy See once more renews its appeal for the adoption of an international ban on this deplorable practice. Moreover, the situations of conflict and humanitarian crisis, criminals take advantage of the unstable socio-political environment to subjugate, enslave, and traffic people. We are witnessing this traffic phenomenon unfold in Ukraine as one of the many devastating consequences of this war. Trafficking is a real problem, a tragedy within a tragedy that feeds on humanitarian crisis. In such circumstances, victims of conflict are at grave risk of falling prey to human traffickers who, under the guise of offering assistance, deceitfully trap them into vile exploitation. The fight against trafficking can be won, but it requires a clear understanding of its root causes and a determined effort to eradicate them. It would be disingenuous, however, to address this problem without taking into account the underlying root causes that condemn thousands of women and men to become victims of trafficking. These causes include poverty, war, persecution by authoritarian governments, as well as natural disasters that render them vulnerable to the snares of the criminal networks. Therefore, the delegation of the Holy See remains convinced that coordinated action by individual countries and the international community is indispensable to ensuring a life of peace and dignity for all. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
I thank you very much. We have still half of the list, not to speak about the reserve list. So thank you for sticking to the time limit, dear audience. Now the floor goes to the UNHCR. Thank you.
Distinguished Chairperson, dear participants, my name is Marta Szczepanik and I'm reading the statement on behalf of UNHCR, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. As the OSCE marks the significant moment of the 50th anniversary of the Helsinki Final Act and UNHCR the 75th anniversary after its creation in 1950, it is a good moment to reflect on the inspiring 30 years of collaboration. Our mandates are distinct but complementary, and to sustainably protect people affected by conflict demands a holistic approach, encompassing security as well as humanitarian aspects. Looking back, perhaps the most visible result of our cooperation was engagement in the Sarajevo process, a process on durable solutions for refugees and IDPs from the wars in former Yugoslavia in the 1990s. This led to the regional housing program. Over its 11-year lifespan, the program provided durable housing solutions to more than 36,000 vulnerable people across Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Montenegro, and Serbia. Reflecting on the most recent achievements over this last year, a new publication was launched by ODIHR, OSCE High Commissioner on National Minorities, and UNHCR on the prevention of childhood statelessness in the OSCE area. Another important milestone this year has been the digitalization of the protection checklist by the OSCE Conflict Prevention Center in collaboration with UNHCR. The newly launched digital platform offers practical guidance and showcases best practices for effective cooperation on the ground. Another area where our cooperation has left a positive footprint over the years is in the area of integration. After a successful pilot project in Poland, 2025 saw the start of the Interagency Academy of Integration of Migrants and Refugees in the Baltic states, which provides trainings and room to exchange for government officials. Finally, we collaborate closely on anti-trafficking efforts through several strategic initiatives emphasizing rapid victim identification, prosecution of traffickers, coordinated policy development, as well as joint capacity building. Before concluding, it should also be recalled in these challenging times that the numbers of forcibly displaced people globally have never been higher. By the end of last year, there were over 25 million refugees and IDPs in the OSCE area alone, which corresponds to an increase of 190% in only 10 years. I emphasize that the established partnership between our two organizations serves as a beacon of principled cooperation, and this engagement is needed currently more than ever. Let me conclude by encouraging OSCE participating states to translate their commitments into tangible actions that uphold the dignity and safety of forcibly displaced and stateless people. Thank you.
I thank you. The floor goes now to Junkirik Initiative Group.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые коллеги. Сегодня мы
Dear colleagues, we have gathered today to talk about the important thing, the human trafficking and how Uzbekistan actively fights this. This is a phenomenon which doesn't only ruin individual lives, but it also undermines the whole organization. So Uzbekistan keeps informing and ensuring the legal basis for counteracting human trafficking. There is also a presidential decree banning human trafficking and forced labor. This document provides the basis for organs that may fight it. Notwithstanding the legal basis, this problem is still valid, and it requires international cooperation. Our state is very much connected to this, such as the UN Convention, and we want to meet the goals of UN sustainable growth. Based on a recent reform, a systematic Center for Analysis at the prosecutor's office is being established to be able to actively respond to the threat. At Tashkent, there's a rehabilitation center for survivors by providing them with legal, medical, and psychological help. I'd like to take this opportunity to draw attention to one more situation indirectly connected with the illegal migration situation at the OSCE, who on May 20th, 2024, in an interview, a person representing a radio said that that person was being tortured by the representatives of the official authorities of Uzbekistan, owing to which he developed a gangrene in the leg. In fact, he suffers from diabetes. And the thing is that he's showing himself as a victim of the political regime in Uzbekistan, and he wants to receive the status of a refugee in Europe. And this is actually a violation of international law, and to denigrate the a picture of Uzbekistan. So I want to show my own evaluation of that.
Now I give the floor to Karakabalastan News Channel.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kuratov, Karakalpakstan, ethnic minority in Uzbekistan. Our group is a victim of discrimination, repression, and ecological disaster. These problems are related to lead to violation of rights and lead to forced replacement and human trafficking. Uzbekistan implements international commitments, but it does not apply to those who live in Karakalpakstan. The protests in the country, in the region Karakalpakstan, in the light of the constitutional reform, the demonstrations were those who participated in this were subject of repression. Residents of Pakistan are victims of persecution. In the neighboring countries do not accept them. In 2023, organized crime rates were very high. Research showed that Uzbekistan residents see problems in this, and in the region of Karakol, Pakistan, this sexual trafficking is continuing, especially concerning Puli people. Uzbekistan should protect rights and voices of those living in Karakol, Pakistan. Thank you very much for your attention.
And give the floor to the Center for the Analysis of Democratic Processes. Thank you. Is there someone to take the floor on behalf of the Center of the Analysis of Democratic Processes? If not, I'm giving the floor to Almaty City Bar Association, please.
Всем добрый день, здравствуйте. Я являюсь...
Hello, I'm a lawyer of the Almaty City Bar Association. I will explain the topic immediately. Many times our lawyers mentioned the pressure from the side of the courts and also persecution of the law enforcement in order to prevent lawyers to defend their clients. During several years ago, lawyers face serious persecution for their professional work that undermines the status of the bar. Last year, the president talked to MPs about the importance of bar association and actually even making the status of lawyers equal with the status of prosecutors, but it hasn't been implemented yet. Lawyers need to defend their clients, but some lawyers have been charged with violating lawyer-client privilege. And luckily, those charges were dropped. In case of Dinara Jubanova, also they initiated administrative case on defamation charges. And also there were administrative charges in case of another lawyer.
I'm speaking on the topic. I would like to find a few aspects of the Code of Conduct for all those who are taking the floor. First, the language which is used must be respectful. Second, the topic is, I shall remind, human trafficking and trafficking in human beings and answers public policies to address this topic. And third, to speak within the limits. The list is rather long. So either you speak on the topic, sir, or we will give the floor to the next one.
Can I finish my topic?
I'm afraid what you were saying was not on the topic.
Okay.
So I thank you. I pass the floor to Azerbaijani community in Poland, please.
Distinguished Chair, esteemed delegates, my name is Ulkar Jabarli and I represent the Azerbaijani community in Poland. Today, I wish to draw attention to one of the most enduring humanitarian challenges Azerbaijan is facing. As a result of the war unleashed against Azerbaijan in 1991, a significant part of the territory of Azerbaijan was illegally occupied. All captured areas were ethnically cleansed of more than 700,000 of Azerbaijanis. Also, almost 300,000 Azerbaijanis were expelled from Armenia at the end of 1980s. During the 30-year occupation, most occupied districts, cities, and villages of Azerbaijan were razed to the ground, and Azerbaijani cultural heritage in those territories suffered considerable damage. Furthermore, most of the occupied territories were heavily mined, including even the cemeteries. The claim that the Armenian residents of the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan were expelled is not true. In fact, those who decided to relocate to Armenia or other countries did so voluntarily, even though Azerbaijan encouraged them to stay and offered reintegration. Armenian NGOs should look at their own leaders' long-standing policy of racial segregation and ethnic incompatibility to understand the reason behind it.
I'm so topic, right? Humanitarian issues and other commitments, including combating trafficking in human beings, refugees, and displaced
Yes, it's about the refugees.
Yeah, but
yes.
It was not the point you were making another point,
Yes, following
Madam.
of my topic is about refugees.
Can you go straight to the
Yes.
point of refugees? Thank
Yes, yes. Following the liberation of its territories, the government of Azerbaijan launched the Great Return State program aimed at restoring liberated territories and ensuring the safe and dignified return of displaced families, refugees. So far, more than 50,000 have returned to their homes. The scale of reconstruction is immense. Between 2021 and 2024, 17.6 billion Azerbaijani manats was allocated for recovery and infrastructure projects, with an additional 4 billion Azerbaijani manats planned for 2025. Nevertheless, serious humanitarian challenges persist. More than 9,000 square kilometers of liberated territories remain contaminated with landmines. Since 2020, over 220,000 hectares have been cleared, yet new civilian casualties are still reported every month. The consequences of displacement continue to affect generations. Many families still live in temporary settlements. Children born in exile are now raising their own families who have never seen their ancestral homes. Access to education, healthcare, and sustainable employment remains.
I'm sorry, you have exceeded the it, and the floor goes to Italy. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, my name is Pietro Barbuti. I represent the OSCE Office of the Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Italy aligns with the statement delivered by the European Union and would like to add some additional remarks in its national capacity. Mixed migration flows across the OSCE region and beyond pose new and complex challenges to our security, exacerbating the vulnerability of groups and individuals and making them more likely to become victims of exploitation. Italy is strongly committed on this front, with policies for the prevention of and assistance to victims of trafficking, as well as the fight against those who exploit the victims of this crime and their vulnerabilities. A new national anti-trafficking action plan for 2026 to 2028 is currently being prepared, and will further enhance Italy's action against human trafficking. At the OSCE, Italy actively participates in and supports the simulation-based training organized by the Office of the Special Representative and Coordinator for Combating Trafficking in Human Beings across the OSCE region. Last year, the Center of Excellence for Stability Policy Units of the Italian Carabinieri in Vicenza successfully hosted the first OSCE regional simulation-based training dedicated to the Mediterranean region. A follow-up workshop is planned in December 2025 and will be followed by a new exercise focused on Balkan route next year. Madam Chair, the nature of human trafficking continues to evolve, and so must our response. The OSCE is at the forefront of this international effort, and Italy strongly supports it. I thank you.
I thank you very much for being short, and now the floor goes to Public Foundation National Endowment for Prosperity.
Добрый день, меня зовут Марат, эксперт фонда National.
Hello, I'm Marat. I'm an expert of National Endowment for Prosperity. Human trafficking is a global problem that deprives people of their fundamental rights and freedom in the OSCE region as well. Despite significant efforts to combat human trafficking, according to the United Nations Global Report, millions of people fall victim to traffickers every year. Women and girls make around 71% of all identified victims. Kazakhstan did not have a separate law on combating human trafficking as required by international human rights treaties. The development of such a law became necessary to improve our national legislation and bring it in line with international law. The issue received special attention from the United Nations. For effective prevention, the law introduces the international concept of a potential victim of human trafficking. Those in vulnerable situations who may become targets of violence or exploitation due material, psychological, or other dependency, young or advanced age, orphanhood, pregnancy, disability, illness, substance use, unemployment, homelessness, lack of documentation, or irregular migration status. So the Palermo Protocol is taken into account. A separate chapter of the law is devoted to the protection of minors, the most vulnerable category. The definition of exploitation of a person has been brought in line with international conventions. An important innovation is the introduction of administrative liability for those who fail to conclude labor contracts with potential victims of trafficking, including minors and foreign nationals. It was a widespread practice. Such practices, which unfortunately remain widespread, often lead to serious forms of labor exploitation. We're witnessing new forms of human trafficking today via social networks, online advertisements. To prevent such crimes, amendments have also been introduced into other legal acts. The comprehensive law adopted by the Parliament of Kazakhstan is timely and relevant. Its structure and content are aimed at preventing human trafficking and send a clear message. The state will not tolerate this crime, which violates human rights and human dignity. We express our sincere appreciation to our international partners, OSCE and IOM, for their valuable support in developing and adopting this law. We believe that this law will serve as a strong legal foundation for the further improvement of legislation in this area, fully in line with international human rights standards, the principles of the Palermo Protocol, and the commitments of the OSCE.
And the floor goes to the Karakalpak diaspora in the USA.
I want to address the questions asked by Uzbekistan delegation and Uzbekistan gongos that is so widespread here. I'm covering my face because of the brutal reprisal by the government of Uzbekistan. And also, if you listen to them, it's a heaven on earth in Uzbekistan, but actually it's a hell in Karakalpakstan. I stand before you today not only as a voice from Karakalpakstan, but as a witness to a quiet tragedy that few in the world have heard. Karakalpakstan, a region that once flourished, now it stands as one of the most devastated places on earth. In recent years, Karakalpak people have faced forced displacement, became the victims of human trafficking. They faced a wave of arbitrary arrest, torture, and intimidation simply for expressing who they are, for daring to say we exist. Peaceful protesters were murdered. Families have been torn apart. Mothers wait for sons who never return. And those who flee repression often find that the long arm of persecution follows them across borders through transnational international repression, surveillance, and threats. This is not a political issue. It's a humanitarian one. It's about the right to speak without fear, the right to live without being watched, the right to bury your loved ones without hiding the truth. Yet, despite the suffering, the spirit of Karakalpak people endures in every village and the diaspora community. You will find resilience, people working quietly to preserve their culture, their language, and their hope for freedom. They ask for solidarity. Today, I call upon the international community to help bring visibility to their struggle, demand independent investigation into human rights abuses, support Karakalpak civil society organizations forced into exile, and ensure that the stories of those silenced are not erased. Last night, Uzbekistan government hosted a big party in this room. They provided food, gifts, and they're whitewashing their reputation. Please do not be bought by their PR campaign. Please come to Karakalpakstan, register human rights organizations in Karakalpakstan, and you will find the realities because they are hiding. They are not bringing Karakalpak ethnic minorities to this event. They are bringing their Uzbek ethnic who are whitewashing, and if they didn't bring any woman from Karakalpakstan, please do not trust to their lies and just keep them accountable. I hope that you will address these issues and you will make our voices heard. Thank you so much for this platform.
I thank you, Madam. The floor goes to Human Rights Center Gloshen. Is there anyone under Human Rights Center Gloshen? If not, the floor goes to Karakalpak branch of Uzbekistan Children and Families Support Association.
Здравствуйте. Карлпакское отделение Ассоциации поддержки детей и семей. Уважаемые участники конференции.
Association, Uzbekistan Association to Support Children and Family. I would like to share the recent results of the research. Its aim was to assess the level of informing the population about human trafficking, to find out what are the attitudes and forms of fight against human trafficking. The research showed that a lot of people are aware of the problem. Over 80% believe that human trafficking pose a risk of security of the country. Many believe that the situation improved in Uzbekistan. This relates to very effective work of organizations and state authorities. During recent years, from 15 to 30% increased the share of people who've recently learned what human trafficking is. Awareness of the problem remains high. The research shows that information about a fight with human trafficking is widespread. There is a need to prevent, need to conduct preventing activities. Dear colleagues and participants, I would like to also touch upon the following. I am from Karakalpakstan, and I receive in pain what some of the present here say. They talk about violation of human rights in Karakalpakstan region. I would like to point out that Mr. Bekmuratov violates the rights of his own children, does not pay alimonies.
To Hungarian Helsinki Committee, please. No, yes, okay, please, Madam.
Distinguished guests, The Helsinki Agreement is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. The agreement that in hindsight provided the framework for a paradigm shift during the Cold War, for more cooperation and freedom, and for the birth of the Helsinki groups. And I'm proud here to represent one of them, the Hungarian Helsinki Committee. We should not forget how much we owe to it, to the fact that the respect for the then existing borders has given the possibility for peaceful decades in Europe, even if they were not characterized by the same freedoms foreseen in the Helsinki Final Act in all the countries. The signing of the Helsinki Agreement was preceded by long years of discussion and negotiation. This spirit of cooperation in Europe was drastically altered by the wars that ensued in Yugoslavia and in Ukraine most recently. Europe has shown how effectively it can protect refugees following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, with the activation of temporary protection and with the rights attached to it, entailing, among others, access to the labor market and allowing for free movement of refugees from Ukraine within the EU. However, there are some states that seem to value cooperation, solidarity, and peace that this brings about to a lesser extent. Sadly, Hungary is one of them. The Hungarian government has been consistently disobeying the common European rules relating to refugees from Ukraine, thereby making them homeless, by limiting their access to subsidized housing, as a result compelling some to return to war-torn Ukraine, despite UNHCR's recommendations. And Hungary, by not taking its own responsibility seriously, burdens other EU countries, breaking not just the law, but also the principle of solidarity. This is really not the type of cooperation expected in this room. The fact that Hungary is not willing to implement the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum, that it continues with its practice of violent pushbacks at its southern border, that it has made its asylum procedure inaccessible, are all clear signs of its unwillingness to cooperate. This conference is designed for dialogue between governments and civil society actors. However, not everybody is here in this room who would be needed for this dialogue to be meaningful. The question is, on this nice and round anniversary, how can we change that? How can we once again evoke the spirit of cooperation? My hope is that next year we will be more in this room, willing to listen and talk. And I also hope that next year I can share a different intervention that will mention fewer human rights violations committed against refugees in Hungary. Happy anniversary to all of us.
I thank you indeed. Now the floor goes to Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Chair. For decades, hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis lived with the pain of displacement, waiting for the moment they could return to their homes. After restoring the territorial integrity, the first state program on the Great Return to the liberated territories of the Republic of Azerbaijan was adopted on November 16, 2022. This state strategy aims to ensure the safe and dignified return of our displaced citizens to the liberated territories. By 2026, the program intends to resettle 34,500 families. The government of Azerbaijan continues to implement all necessary measures in order to create decent conditions for displaced persons. Villages and towns are being rebuilt with modern infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and new economic opportunities. More than 50,000 people have already returned to their homes. During the resettlement process, priority is given to families living in particularly difficult conditions, for example, in dormitories, temporary camps, or administrative buildings. However, the challenges remain immense. Despite ongoing clearance efforts, Azerbaijan remains among the most heavily landmine-contaminated countries in the world. Large areas contaminated with landmines must be cleared, and much of the infrastructure must be rebuilt from the ground up. These efforts demand significant financial, logistical, and human resources, and the overall costs of implementing all projects simultaneously are considerable. The number of post-conflict mine victims in Azerbaijan now has reached 409 since November 2020, of whom 71 lost their lives and 338 suffered horrific injuries, most of them civilians. Another humanitarian issue is the fate of nearly 4,000 Azerbaijani nationals who went missing in connection with the conflict since the end of 90s. Despite these challenges, real progress has been made. More than 1,000 of families have already returned to their lands, and we remain committed to ensuring the safe and dignified return of all displaced persons. It is also unfortunate that certain organizations from Armenia claiming to act as NGOs continue to make unfounded allegations against Azerbaijan, which we firmly reject. As regards to allegations on ethnic cleansing, it's a false narrative which was refuted by international mechanisms, among others by the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UN mission to the region, by the Council of Europe Human Rights Commissioner after her visit to the region, as well as residents themselves. Thank you very much.
I thank you, sir, and pass the floor to the representative of Turkey, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We witness with great concern that the number of forcibly displaced persons around the world has reached an unprecedented level as a result of persecution, conflict, violence, and human rights violations. Numbers speak for themselves. According to the UNHCR 2024 statistics, more than 1 in every 67 people on Earth has been forced to flee. In the OSCE region and beyond, the recent increase in displacement has been driven by armed conflicts in Ukraine and in the Middle East. These conflicts have raised grave concerns about severe backsliding on humanitarian issues. Since 2022, the OSCE has paid particular attention to the problems and risks faced by those who had to flee Ukraine, including through the work of ODIHR and in cooperation with other international partners. With the plight of displaced persons and refugees requires long-term, sustainable, and comprehensive solutions. This includes providing basic human needs, improving living conditions, expanding resettlement programs, and ensuring that voluntary returns take place in safety and dignity. In the meantime, we must also recognize the immense challenges faced by host communities and ensure that solidarity and burden sharing remain guiding principles. Turkey has already experienced heavy migration pressure from neighboring countries by hosting refugees close to 3 million and has taken all necessary measures to make them feel at home. We remain committed to providing protection and support for refugees in line with relevant UN parameters and our national legislations. Madam Chair, human trafficking remains one of the most serious and complex challenges in the OSCE region. With its transnational nature, close links to organized crime, and disproportionate impact on vulnerable groups, including women, children, and refugees, human trafficking is often described as a modern form of slavery. It gravely violates individual rights and freedoms, undermines public order, and inflicts long-term harm on victims and societies alike. To combat such violations, Turkey maintains a decisive and progressive approach to combating trafficking human beings, built on the 4 pillars of prevention, protection, prosecution, and cooperation. Over the past 2 decades, we have introduced significant legal and institutional measures. Turkey has recently adopted its 3rd National Action Plan on combating trafficking human beings, prepared through an inclusive process involving public institutions, civil society, international partners, and academia. I would like to note here that 2 days ago in Ankara, the Turkish Financial Crimes Investigation Board and relevant authorities hosted a roundtable meeting with the Office of the OSCE Special Representative and Coordinator for Combating Human Beings, with the aim of enhancing financial investigations into trafficking cases. In conclusion, we commend the work of the Special Representative Gary Johnston and our dedicated team in this challenging area and reiterate Turkey's commitments to support OSCE's efforts to strengthen resilience against trafficking across the region. Thank you.
I thank you very much and pass the floor to France.
Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished participants. Armed conflicts are multiplying and intensifying, as are violations of international humanitarian law, with dire consequences for civilian populations. In view of this, France reiterates its support for respect for international humanitarian law in order to not add barbarity to the violence of war. These conflicts lead to an increasing number of forced displacements. These populations, among the most vulnerable, are in immediate need of humanitarian assistance. France reaffirmed its support for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the multilateral system, which remains the fairest and most effective instruments of solidarity. France co-sponsored the Global Refugee Forum in December 2023, and we remain committed to implementing its common goals. We promote inclusive reception policies, learning French, access to housing, education and training, inclusion through sport. France launched the Avec Elle initiative with the help of dozens of states, organizations, and companies to support refugee women and girls who are particularly exposed to sexual and gender-based violence and human trafficking. Human trafficking is a serious violation of human rights, and the fight against these is one of our priorities. In December 2023, France launched its third national action plan to combat exploitation and human trafficking. This initiative aims to better protect against different forms of exploitation, but also to strengthen the effectiveness of our criminal policies in order to dismantle networks and achieve sustainable solutions. Effectively combating trafficking also requires international cooperation involving all institutional actors, civil society, and the private sector. At the European level, France fully supports the EU strategy on combating trafficking in human beings. At the international level, France has positioned itself as one of the main supporters of efforts to prevent and fight against trafficking in human beings, providing both normative and financial sustainable support. France, therefore, encourages all countries to ratify and fully implement the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the United Nations Convention against Transnational Organized Crime. Thank you.
I thank you very much. Sorry, the floor goes to Armenia.
Thank you. Madam Moderator, the protection of refugees and displaced persons is not only a humanitarian imperative, but also a cornerstone for ensuring security, stability, and democracy in the OSCE area of responsibility. Failure to uphold their rights and dignity undermines social cohesion, fuels instability, and weakens the foundations of democratic societies. The OSCE has long recognized the urgency of these issues. From the Helsinki Final Act to the Charter of Paris and subsequent Ministerial Council decisions, our commitments emphasize the protection of refugees and displaced persons, their human treatment, and the need for effective international cooperation. Addressing these challenges requires a steadfast commitment by all participating states to uphold international law and, most essentially, international humanitarian law. In this context, international collaboration should prioritize addressing root causes of refugee and displacement crisis. The drivers of enforced displacement are clear: persistent human rights violations, systematic discrimination, and the deliberate targeting of vulnerable populations in conflict zones. Despite the magnitude of the crisis and influx of forcibly displaced people in 2023, Armenia, with the support of international partners, has made significant efforts to provide shelter, urgent assistance, and long-term support. Our priority now is to ensure the full inclusion of refugees into Armenia's social, cultural, and economic life through social housing, access to education and healthcare, and employment opportunities. This approach shifts the focus from immediate humanitarian response to sustainable integration, bridging the gap between relief and development. Madam Moderator, I firmly reject the attempts to equate the forced displacement of Armenians and voluntary movement of Azerbaijanis from Armenia in late 80s. Unlike the case with Armenians, Azerbaijanis and international relevant institutions reported that, such as the report of the PASE rapporteur Atkinson of 1995, who left Armenia exercised their free will and received sufficient compensation from the state institutions of Soviet Armenia. The experiences behind these two events are fundamentally different in nature and context. To equate these situations is not only historically inaccurate, but also diminishes the suffering endured by those forcibly uprooted, undermining the seriousness of forced displacement and its long-lasting impact on affected communities. The plight of refugees is not the burden of one country alone. It is a shared challenge for the entire international community. Armenia calls upon all OSCE participating states to strengthen cooperation, uphold our shared commitments, and take decisive measures to prevent further forced displacements. I thank you.
I thank you, sir. The floor goes now to Dayansh Civil Movement Platform.
Уважаемые представители ОБСЕ, коллеги и участники, я говорю от имени народа Туркменистана, народа, который стал беженцем без войны.
I speak today on behalf of the people of Turkmenistan, people who have become refugees without war, refugees without documents, rights, and without protection. This is not the result of a national disaster. This is a result of deliberate policy of the Turkmen authorities. Today in Turkmen diplomatic missions abroad, citizens are simply not issued passports. No renewals, no replacements, nothing at all. A person may have lived abroad for many years, but once their passport expires, they become invisible to the world. They cannot legalize their status, work, study, or access to health care. Thousands of families are trapped in foreign countries without documents and without the right to return. Turkmenistan is a place of dictatorship, poverty, and total collapse. There is no freedom, no jobs, no future. Today, Diana Dadasheva, Zarina Akhtiamova, Muhammad Shiriev, and many other Turkmen citizens remain abroad without documents, without rights, and without any form of protection. We are living proof of how the regime deliberately deprives its citizens of legal identity and turns them into hostages. Without documents, Turkmen migrants become victims of human trafficking, exploitation, and violence. Women are sold into prostitution. Men are recruited under pressure to take part in criminal war against Ukraine. This is not a choice. This is a new form of slavery. When even soldiers are forced to pick cotton, it's a state-sponsored exploitation. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. We, representatives of the Dayansh civil movement, urge the OSCE and international community to recognize the mass statelessness and lack of documentation among Turkmen citizens as a systemic violation of human rights, establish mechanisms for temporary protection of Turkmen citizens stranded abroad, investigate cases of human trafficking, demand that Turkmen authorities end the practice of refusing to issue international passports. If this is not stopped, the world will face thousands of undocumented migrants, bringing them an increase in gray zone criminality, illegal labor, slavery, and human trafficking. This strategy concerns the whole world, and a blind eye to a crime against humanity.
Floor to Democratic Party of Alga, Kazakhstan.
I'm an activist from Kazakhstan. I'm a member of the non-registered party Alga. Today I would like to discuss a very problematic issue: human trafficking, displacement of people, and illegal trade with human organs, especially in connection with relations between Kazakhstan and China. Human trafficking is modern slavery. Unfortunately, we are not only the origin country, but also a transit country. Especially women and young people become victims. Quite often they are lied to, promised jobs abroad. In the end, they are forced into labor or sexual exploitation. The issue is deteriorated by migrant processes. We have also migrants from neighboring countries. And I should also mention illegal sale of human organs. Although we don't have official evidence, still it's happening between Kazakhstan and China. Some NGOs documented cases when human trafficking victims became also harvesting donors. And this is a very serious issue that requires our attention. Counteracting human trafficking is not only the task of the government, but this is the task that should be implemented by the whole society. We should be vigilant and pay attention to people in difficult situations. Do not be indifferent. Only with our common efforts we can protect human dignity and the right to life. Thank you very much.
Very much. A point of order on my side, because I saw the gentleman sitting next to you filming, probably. I would like to remind the audience that filming in the plenary hall is prohibited for public distribution. Participants may film for personal use only if agreed in advance with the person taking the floor. With this reminder, I'd like to pass the floor to National Human Rights Center of the Republic of Uzbekistan before opening the reserve list for 10 minutes and wrapping up afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Uzbekistan attached great importance to fulfilling its OSCE commitments in the humanitarian sphere, including the protection of refugees, migrants, and the fight against human trafficking. Uzbekistan is implemented a policy of zero tolerance toward human trafficking, which includes legislative and institutional reforms, prevention, and social support for victims. A national strategy against trafficking for 2025 has been implemented. A national commission to combat human trafficking is operating, and the hotline provided victims with timely support. The Republican Rehabilitation Center provided assistance to 113 victims. Particular attention is paid to awareness-raising activities. 244 advocacy groups are operating, and more than 10,000 events have been held. Today, the unique three-tier mechanism has been created to ensure the safety and legality of the migration process. First, pre-departure preparation, which include language and professional training for citizens before leaving abroad. Second, protection of rights and support of migrants abroad. And third, reintegration and employment for citizens returning home. Migration Agency under the Cabinet of Ministers has provided consultation and material assistance to tens of thousands of labor migrants and helped recover over $300,000 in unpaid wages. Recently, the Migration Resource Center was opened in Tashkent with the support of the European Union and the National Migration Agency and the International Center for Migration Policy Development. This center provides migrants with the information on safe migration, legal employment opportunities, and reintegration support. Building on this humanitarian approach, Uzbekistan has also extended its compassion and solidarity beyond its borders. Recently, the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan adopted a decree on assistance to Palestinian citizens, which provides for their social support, medical care, and access to education. This step has become a bright example of humanism and international solidarity. Uzbekistan will continue to strengthen its system of protection of victims of trafficking, refugees, and migrants in full accordance with international standards. We are also ready to actively participate in OSCE initiatives, share our national experience in social reintegration, and enhance cooperation with the civil society and international partners. Thank you for your attention.
I thank you for being brief, Madam, and I open the list of reserve for a couple of minutes before we wrap up. First, NGO Digital Generation Uzbekistan, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam Moderator. I have substituted my colleague. I represent Barqaror Hayat NGO from Uzbekistan. Distinguished participants of the conference, ladies and gentlemen, the issue of combating human trafficking remains one of the priorities for all OSCE participating states.
I'm sorry, sir, but there is no such a replacement. I have to stick to the list, and either NGO Digital Generation Association is there or not. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I have to go to the next in the list.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. The next one is the first department, please. If the first department is not in the room, I will pass the floor to Turkmenistan.
Первый отдел в зале.
Sorry.
First department is in the room. Dear representatives of the states, dear colleagues from civil society, my name is Max Olenichev. I'm LGBT right lawyer at First Department. I will talk about the human dimension, about migration and safety for LGBT plus people who from vulnerable groups who are forced to leave Russia. Russia has passed laws that have made the lives of LGBT plus people unsafe and passed the law on LGBT propaganda, transgender transitions, including ban on changing documents. LGBT movement has been declared extremist. All this influences safety of people. After Russia started the war against Ukraine, repression against LGBT plus community intensified sharply. Russia uses the theme of traditional values as a tool of internal mobilization and justification. This is a policy of stigmatization where identity is seen as a threat. In practice, it means public harassment. Not only activists leave the country, but also citizens live in the country looking for a work in safe environments without persecution. In many countries, some lack of trust is taking place. For example, in people, some cases of migration authorities have denied asylum to lesbian and bisexual women. This approach encourages homophobia and transphobia and ignores systemic vulnerability. In addition, some states outdated data on the situation of LGBT. We saw analytics dating back to 2018, so country reports need to be updated regularly and risk assessed on the basis of current information. In some reception centers, transgender applicants are unable to continue hormone therapy. This leads to, in some cases, suicide. We recommend the OSCE countries to use actual data and to conduct internal protocols on security to react to discrimination, provide access to support to make it easy to access safe countries for people persecuted in Russia. We recommend OSCE to simplify issuance of residence and work permits. OSCE recommends creating an overview of best practices. Let us build bridges, not barriers. Thank you.
The last speaker for today will be representative of Georgia, and then we will come back to the panelists for concluding remarks and wrapping up.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I'm representing Georgia. My name is Rebas Sakwarelidze, and I would like to draw your attention to dire situation of internally displaced persons and refugees in Georgia, a grave consequence of the Russian Federation's aggression and occupation. 70 years ago, in August 2008, Russia launched a full-scale military attack against Georgia, during which the homes of 35,000 people were burned, destroyed, forcing hundreds of thousands of civilians to become IDPs and refugees. Those individuals were not only displaced by violence, but have also endured the systematic violation of their fundamental rights, particularly the right of property. In both Abkhazia and the Tskil Valley region, the deliberate destruction of homes belonging to ethnic Georgians and IDPs constitutes a clear, persistent breach of international human rights standards. International legal bodies have long confirmed Russia's illegal occupation and effective control over those territories, both before the during 2008 aggression. Rulings by European Court of Human Rights and the International Criminal Court hold the Russian Federation for widespread violation in Georgia's occupied regions, including the right of IDPs and refugees to return home in safety and dignity. In 2025, Russian occupation regime in Sukhumi prohibit entrance or real estate transfer of Georgians and their family members who assist the Georgian Defense Forces in 1992-1993, or whose family members engaged in action against Russian aggression. Those discriminatory measures entrance ethnic exclusion and undermines the rights of IDP and refugees. Russia has advanced further towards the de facto annexation of Georgian occupied territories by enhancing so-called dual citizenship agreements with occupation regime in Sukhumi and Tskhinvali in April 2025. Those arrangements integrate the occupied population into Russia's legal and political space, considering Russia and Moscow control eroding Georgia's sovereignty. Addressing those challenges require robust international mechanisms, effective functioning of Geneva international discussions with key actors like OSCE, European Union, United Nations, and United States. Is vital for ensuring Russia's implementation of its international obligations, including the European Union mandated 12 August 2008 ceasefire agreement and safe return of IDPs and refugees. Strong leadership from our co-chair organization, including OSCE, is critical to complete Russian engage meaningful dialogue within the Geneva International Discussion framework and fulfill its international legal obligations. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I thank you, and my apologies to the Turkmen delegation because I was a bit confused by the previous slot. So with those apologies, the floor goes to Turkmenistan as the final speaker on the reserve list before going back to the panelists. You have the floor.
Прошу прощения, представитель Казахстана.
I'm sorry, representative of Kazakhstan?
Turkmenistan. It's not for the civil society on my list. I have the Turkmenistan, the representative of Turkmenistan, official representative to take the floor. Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. The principles of humanitarianism in Uzbekistan have been taken care of in the legislation. The Turkmenistani constitution gives everyone the right to move freely and enjoy the protection the plans for 2022-24 on the elimination of citizenlessship. There are over 2,000 people who were living in Turkmenistan received the Turkmenistani citizenship, and over 5,000 people received the right to reside, right of residence in Turkmenistan. By doing the same, we have eliminated the phenomenon of statelessship by this meeting the obligation that no one should be left without as stateless. So also for the next years there is we have contemplated international cooperation and the Turkmenistani law also provides for preventing trafficking in human beings, and along with the OSCE Center in Ashgabat, there are training sessions organized for the border guards, officers working in the public prosecution to enhance their knowledge about human trafficking. Also, when it comes, we are providing international protection, and in the national legislation provisions are being implemented to prevent human trafficking and statelessness. In the criminal code, there are protections also giving the relating to to illegal migration, the Office of Ombudsman has been implemented, which has also enhanced the level of protecting people, especially those in a sensitive, vulnerable situation. And we also cooperate with international internations to work on different processes to ensure the problem of statelessness and
since we have to conclude, can you just conclude your speech, please?
We are ready to work with our partners in OSCE to ensure that we can ensure the dignity and cooperation with others. Thank you very much.
Our session must finish at 1. I will now turn back to our distinguished panelists, starting with
Разрешите, извините, пожалуйста. Можно комментарий?
I'm sorry, madam, you can't take the floor. Mrs. Lysander, for concluding remarks before...
Но многие спикеры говорили не о торговле людьми, поэтому...
Madam, I'm sorry. Now we have reached the conclusion session, so please don't take the floor. I haven't given you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. To wrap up, we need to address trafficking at its root, which are things like poverty, people fleeing wars and conflicts, but not forgetting also the main vulnerability of cyber trafficking, which affects many, many of our young children. And that vulnerability might surprise you, which is loneliness. We need to learn how to identify. How do we do this? Trainings in a trauma-informed way on identification, how to react and how to report. And the best way to report is using the National Referral Mechanism, the NRMs, this is an excellent tool to do this. We need to train first responders, healthcare workers, lawmakers, prosecutors. We need to go into schools and we need to give our children the tool of awareness to protect them. We need to keep our children safe. We need to set up councils of survivor leaders to guide and advise and work alongside you. And one of the main things, which is very frustrating at times for probably everybody in this room, we need to prioritize funding for these trainings and NRMs and councils. We all have a part to play. Partnership is vital. Doing nothing is not acceptable. We need to learn from each other. We need to learn not just our best practices, but we also need to become vulnerable to learn from things that don't work. We don't need to hide what doesn't work. We need to share our challenges because in that way we can work together in a more effective way. Support each other, and this is the way forward for a more effective way of working.
Thank you so very much. Now I turn to Mr. Kadou for 3 minutes of concluding remarks, please.
Thank you very much again, and just want to a bit of as someone being trafficked and lived experience. We're talking about the human traffic. The human traffic means it's the people who are playing with the human life. I myself a product at some point for the human traffic. The people who doesn't have a fear or any feeling of you as a human being, they treat you as a product. Therefore, there is a lot of young people in every place who've gone through a lot of challenging issues, face this, and investing into these young people, giving opportunity how these people will be able to work with human rights, and also in our office, being able to work with these people, I think where that solution will come to the table, and also being able to give a chance for the young people they will be in a position of telling the truth, not only telling the stories, but also decide what is and how is the best for the young people to eliminate the trafficking. Thank you very much.
I thank you very much for powerful words again. And Mr. Manes, on your side.
Thanks. Today we heard about migrants, IDPs, refugees, trafficked. And while those situations sometimes interlink and intersect, I really want to insist that it's not the same. I'm not playing on words, but it's not the same rights, unfortunately, definitely not the same needs, not the same history, and not the same, I would say, protection required. And therefore, I really want each of us to realize that, behind those terms, you have a reality, and you cannot mix all of them. Also, all of them, of course, have needs and are part of human rights. The causes we saw this morning, we heard about unemployment, homeless, religion, gender, sexual orientation, minority, conflict. So those causes are multiple indeed, and I don't think there is any way to tackle all of them in one single approach. However, I think what we heard is that states need to develop not only plans but concrete training, and those plans shall not be designed within the four walls of a ministry. They shall involve minorities, they shall involve NGOs, they shall involve the decentralized level, and they should, as I said before, and I will stop there. Not only the regular situation, but the crisis one. Just to end when I started, I think we saw today that crises do not easily end and can last for generations. And therefore, we need to all together look at those situations in an evolving way, not getting stuck in a crisis. However, there will never be progress. And again, trafficking will be flourishing on this floor of refugees, migrants, displaced, which are vulnerable, but also present a situation which is not only a human rights concern, which is definitively the key part, but also we saw a security and economic concern. Therefore, having a comprehensive approach to that is required. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we have a lot to reflect on and also to act upon. Thank you for those recommendations and insights. I would like to thank you all, dear participants, to thank also, obviously, the interpreters for their valuable contribution. And I declare this session closed. Thank you very much indeed.